At Cobra Kai, we also see Daniel and Mr. Miyagi entering the dojo, intently watching the class currently taking place. This is important because earlier in the Karate Kid film, Lawerence and Daniel LaRusso had multiple altercations, culminating in Mr. Miyagi defending Daniel, fighting off 5 Cobra Kai students, before more damage could be done. It was a very pivotal moment which places John Kreese firmly into the lives of Mr. Miyagi, Daniel, and furthering his growing father-son relationship with Johnny, a bond which we will explore later. While Kreese is instructing his class, we notice a student losing his concentration instead of practicing the techniques as instructed. Kreese trips his student, sending him to the mat, looming over him, remarking, "Losing concentration in a fight means you are dead meat." Kreese, after ordering his student to do push-ups on his knuckles, commands the rest of the class into sparring, or as he calls it, combat. It's in this sparring session where we see Kreese instruct his students to strike a fallen opponent, reinforcing the mantra of aggressiveness, overwhelming offense, and no mercy. Throughout giving his speech to his students, he notices Johnny Lawrence distractedly staring at Daniel and Mr. Miyagi. Kreese, unhappy with his student's lack of focus, demands if there's a problem. It's here where Johnny informs him about Mr. Miyagi and the problems with Daniel. Kreese approaches Miyagi and Daniel, inquiring about the accusation that Mr. Miyagi attacked his students. While Miyagi attempting to make peace, asking them to leave Daniel alone, Kreese isn't interested by this. He wants to settle the score once and for all, offering an impromptu challenge to Daniel against Johnny. Miyagi denies this request, saying there's too much advantage for Cobra Kai, so it's decided that they will settle their differences at the All Valley tournament. Yes, that same tournament, Kreese had already coached his students to 4 consecutive championship title wins. Before leaving, Miyagi requests that nobody attack Daniel before the tournament, allowing him time to train. Kreese obliges this request before threatening to hurt Miyagi and Daniel if they back out of the tournament. At the 1984 All-Valley Tournament, we see Mr. Miyagi and Daniel fight their way through, making it to the semi-finals against Cobra Kai's Bobby Brown, as well as Johnny Lawrence and Kreese, running over their competition making the finals. Moments before the semi-final, Kreese pulls his student Bobby aside and informs him he wants Daniel out of commission. Bobby, protesting to this, confident in his ability to best Daniel in fair combat, is stifled by Kreese, ordering Bobby to use dishonorable tactics and injure Daniel, which he begrudgingly agrees. However, after attacking Daniel, damaging his leg with an illegal kick, Bobby rushes over and apologizing, screaming it wasn't him and he was sorry. It's actually shocking to see the level of control Kreese has over his students. He's shown himself capable of manipulating others into doing his bidding, even when it's something they morally object against. It's quite insidious. Moving on to the confrontation between Johnny and Daniel in the finals, Daniel surprised Johnny by scoring the first 2 points, with the referee calling a timeout. It's during this timeout we see Kreese once again instruct another student, this time Johnny, to use dirty and unethical tactics by sweeping an already compromised leg. Johnny, while not comfortable with doing this, regrettably followed Kreese's instruction out of fear, attacking Daniel's leg, receiving a warning, and later, losing the fight. The Karate Kid 2 picks up moments after the conclusion of the All Valley tournament. We see Daniel and Mr. Miyagi, an angry Kreese coming up storming past, grabbing and pushing others out of his way. He pauses briefly, showing Miyagi nothing but rage and hatred. In an uncontrollable fury, Kreese is seen arguing with Johnny and his fellow Cobra Kai teammates in the parking lot. Johnny calls Kreese sick for breaking his trophy, leading Kreese in his unstable state, choking Johnny and attacking the other students attempting to help him. Mr. Miyagi sees this from his car and approaches, telling Kreese to let Johnny go, eventually forcing Kreese off him. Kreese readies his stance and attacks, missing the first 2 punches, both breaking car windows, leaving his hands bloody and useless. Miyagi expresses Kreese's own mantra against him, drawing back his arm to strike instead, showing him mercy by honking his nose and letting him fall to the ground. After this defeat at the hands of Mr. Miyagi, all his students finally saw their sensei for who he really was, a callous, cruel, and cold, manipulative serpent of a man. Kreese was down, yes, but he wasn't out, not by a long shot. You see, men like Kreese have a tendency to survive, no matter what the odds. And in a short 8 months, Kreese makes a return in an extremely impactful way. It's 8 months later, and we see a worn, unshaven, and destitute John Kreese. The fallout of his behavior after the tournament in the Karate Kid 2 led to all the Cobra Kai students abandoning the dojo, and since not a single student has enrolled. While watching Kreese mingle in the dojo, we hear a voicemail from the All Valley tournament calling to inform him they have dropped Cobra Kai's membership due to unpaid fees, among other calls regarding his growing debt. We see John Kreese traveling to see his old friend Terry Silver. We remember Terry Silver from Kreese's early years in Vietnam and had paid for the Cobra Kai dojo. Kreese attempts to hand over the dojo keys, explaining he's quitting and moving on. After explaining the events of Karate Kid 1 and 2, the feud between Miyagi, Daniel, and himself, Silver vows revenge on Daniel and Mr. Miyagi, while sending his old war friend on vacation in Tahiti to recuperate. Let's remember, Silver feels a life debt to Kreese for the multiple times he saved him from death during their time in the military. This explains the fierce dedication to his old friend and captain. This is where Silver enacts a masterful plan involving the purchase of 20 new Cobra Kai dojo locations, hiring a karate champion Mike Barnes as a hired gun for the All Valley tournament, and constructing a plan to create a rift between Mr. Miyagi and Daniel, strain their friendship, have Daniel be injured and humiliated in the All Valley by Mike Barnes, leaving only John Kreese's Cobra Kai to be represented nationwide. Silver arrives at Mr. Miyagi's home, introducing him as a student of Master Kim Song-young, the Tang Sudo master from South Korea responsible for training Turner and Kreese, as we discussed earlier. Silver reveals to Daniel and Miyagi that Kreese has died, as he apologizes for Kreese's actions. It's not until much later, when Daniel visits the Cobra Kai dojo telling Silver he's not planning on competing at the upcoming All Valley, we see Kreese reappear back from the dead, scaring Daniel. With Mike Barnes pinning Daniel to the wall and striking him multiple times before letting him flee out the door. Upon receiving instruction from Silver and Kreese, Barnes goes after Daniel, only to be thrown through the dojo doors by Mr. Miyagi, reappearing after the fallout between himself and Daniel earlier. After Kreese and Silver are bested by Miyagi, it's once again agreed that they will settle things at the All-Valley tournament. Miyagi, who now understands the true nature of Silver, trains Daniel for the final fight between him and Barnes. At the 1985 All-Valley, Kreese, Silver, and Barnes performed expertly, making their way to the finals against Daniel. The fight itself is intense and one-sided, Barnes scoring the first point, later losing a point for an illegal groin kick. Barnes repeating the cycle and tactic again, scoring a point, then losing it with another illegal strike. This is because Silver and Kreese are intending on injuring and embarrassing Daniel and hurting Miyagi, seeing his student endure so much punishment. It's during the sudden death round, which determines the winner, where Daniel defeats Barnes in a dramatic swelling of action. This is the final time we see Kreese in the Karate Kid movies. He's seen arguing with the cheering crowd as the movie comes to a close. And with that, Kreese was defeated. He retreated back into the darkness to recover, readapt, and resurrect himself when the time was right. In the animal kingdom, warm-blooded creatures hibernate for the winter. They burrow themselves in the ground and sleep. For the cold-blooded, it's called brumation. For you see, the snake, he burrows himself for the winter as well, but he stays awake and waits. He waits for his opportunity to reveal himself and strike. 33 years later, John Kreese does exactly that.